Hello there. Today's lesson is going to be on drawing with references, using a grid technique to draw things accurately, and then using those references to draw effective caricatures. We will be looking at 3 different levels of drawing today. Level 1 being the use of symbols and what you know about faces, for example. Level 2 being exactly what you see in any given reference photo. And level 3 being caricature, which is basically where you utilize any reference photo to exaggerate the proportions while still making the character or object look a lot like the reference in the photo. A common mistake I notice in character design or drawing from a reference is an over-reliance on drawing what you know as opposed to what you see. So for example, if you're drawing a character, a person, or an object, in the world they're kind of made up of unique shapes, lines, and shading. So if you're drawing these things from memory, or if you're drawing them as like a line art, for example, it might result in the picture looking a bit wonky or looking nothing like the character you're trying to draw. Now we're going to look at the idea of symbols and how they're used in drawings. So symbols are often seen in fledgling artist drawings, especially when they're drawing faces or character proportions. An example of a symbol would be the use of stick people, or a crescent shape for the eyes, or for example a check mark to represent a nose. It can sometimes be difficult to interpret what's being drawn with these limited symbols, which is why it's good to refer to a reference so that you can get the correct shapes, lighting, dynamic attributes of a drawing. Symbols represent drawing something from memory, and this could be whether or not you actually know what the target actually looks like. It can actually be beneficial to trace over your reference photo, whether it's from a printout or actually just cut out from a magazine. This can help you learn not only the basic shapes and proportions of your drawing, but also help you learn the intricacies of their design and what makes them look the way they do, but in a more detailed way. I'll show you an example of how I practice tracing with a picture of my cat. As you can see by this tracing, her eye and head shape aren't as simple as they initially appear. So if I were to draw a picture of her based on what I know a cat looks like, it might end up looking a bit like this. So what I know of cats is they have pointy ears, round faces, and fluffy tails. But that's not necessarily what my cat looks like in this picture. So by tracing the picture, I can study it to discover how the head and body proportions actually work, where everything is supposed to go effectively, and so that when I'm actually drawing her, it'll look more realistic. So now that you're done practicing tracing and studying your image, it's time to work on the actual drawing. The way you do this is you need to divide your reference photo and your drawing paper into 3x3 squares. You can do this by measuring out your paper from top to bottom and side to side, and dividing that number by 3. The most important thing that you need to ensure is that your square sizes are the same on your drawing paper as they are on the reference photo. So this ensures what you're drawing isn't distorted in any way. Once you've got your squares laid out on your reference photo and your drawing paper, you want to look at each individual square to see what's inside it. Going back to the idea of draw what you see rather than draw what you know, I want you to look at each individual square as if it were a blob or a random shape rather than what it actually is. So for example, in your reference, if you see the character's nose happens to fall into the middle square, I want you to draw the shapes that you see rather than what you know a nose to look like. So study each little part of that shape and try to draw it in the way that the reference shows rather than what you know. Shading and lighting are super important when it comes to using the realistic photo reference. If you use hard lines to trace or draw a realistic character, they might look a little bit bizarre. Proper lighting and shading can help you show depth in a face rather than drawing the outline for each feature. So rather than drawing each individual part as an outline, focus on filling in the shades and the colors in each square as if they were completely separate from the image. Now that we've finished levels 1 and 2, we'll be learning level 3, which is caricature. Caricature in drawing is when you exaggerate prominent features of a reference in a cartoony or funny way. These distortions are still grounded in reality, so if you stray too far away from the source material, it might become unrecognizable. To make a caricature, try to focus on specific aspects of the character that stand out. For example, if the focal point is the character's smile, you may want to draw attention to that by making it bigger or more cartoony. Caricature is a mix of levels 1 and 2 by combining symbols with the realistic proportions, or realistic aspects of a face, to make it more interesting, but still recognizable. Caricatures are basically the mix of realism and fantasy. So, in conclusion, whenever you're using a reference, you want to make sure that you're really looking close at the details of the drawing so that you can capture it effectively.